All right. Well, hello there and welcome. Today, we're doing a big picture overview on starting an obesity medicine practice. So, I think, the goal today is going to be primarily for people who are maybe in the early stage of starting a practice or more likely thinking about starting a practice, to consider all the things that you need to be aware of going into that, most of which are fun and exciting things you get to do. And my goal is that you feel less intimidated by those things and realize that they are all doable. So, we're going to start off by exploring reasons you might want your own obesity medicine practice, explore options for what practicing obesity medicine can look like in lots of different contexts, and then understand what having your own practice might look like, and again planning to leave plenty of time for Q&A at the end. So if you're live with me, feel free to put any questions you have in that chat or Q&A area. So, a little bit about me. So, I'm Dr. Carolyn Francavilla, plus or minus Brown, depending on how lengthy I want to be in any given day. I'm a family physician and obesity medicine specialist, and I discovered obesity medicine, or what was at the time called bariatric medicine, as an intern. And I knew it was exactly what I wanted to do. I always wanted to do preventive care, I wanted to focus on lifestyle things. And when I found obesity medicine and learned about the medications, it was absolutely the fit for me. So I started doing my training even during residency, took my family medicine board, and then a few months later, took my obesity medicine board. I was employed by a clinic for a year who was supportive of me practicing obesity medicine. And this was a decade ago. So that was pretty cool to have found that. But I quickly realized to be able to practice medicine the way I wanted, I really needed my own practice. And it also was going to be much more conducive to my lifestyle because I was 7 months pregnant. So I started my practice, which is actually primary care and obesity medicine, a year out of residency and 7 months pregnant. I had a ton of debt from, my medical training. I had a new house that I had to pay for. And I always like to say, if I could do it, anyone could do it, right? I didn't get an MBA. I hadn't been in practice for a decade. I just knew that having my own practice was the right fit for me. I did initially have a business partner who I bought out in 2020. And we've keep, reinventing the practice. At this point, we are a traditional insurance-based practice that also has a membership in addition. We now are a team of 4 physicians and 1 nurse practitioner. So it has grown over time. And then I have some other leadership positions. I'm on the OMA board of trustees. I'm the chair, actually it says chair elect. This is old. I'm now the chair for the AMA's private practice physician section. I have a course called the Obesity Medicine Startup Course and Toolkit. That's all the tools you need to practice obesity medicine, whether that's on your own or in a employed clinic. I do have masterminds. We'll talk more about those at the end, but my next one is starting mid-September. And then I have a podcast called The Dr. Francavilla Show, and that has like lots of great tips on weight and health. So these are all different entrepreneurial things that I've added over time to what I'm doing. But my real passion is, of course, treating patients, but also empowering other clinicians that they can have private practices and that it can sometimes be the very best way to serve patients. Okay, so when you are trying to decide what you want your practice to look like, I always have people start with their why. Why do you want to have your own practice? And this becomes a lot of your mission statement, really your value statement for your practice, and something you go back to when you're trying to decide next steps or what the right choice is. So I find this to be sort of the guiding light for how you're going to run your practice. And this could be a lot of reasons. It may be a passion to treat people in a certain way or a certain demographic that you can't do in your current setting. It may be because of lifestyle. Maybe you want more flexibility with your schedule. You only want to work 30 hours a week. You only want to work 20 hours a week. You want to be done at 2 p.m. every day so you can pick your kids up from school. All the different lifestyle reasons that you can be really flexible with when you have your own practice. Maybe you want a financial change. Maybe you want to make more money and you realize that you're capped as an employee. And if you really, want to generate more revenue for yourself, that having your own practice might be a path to do that. Autonomy. Maybe you just want to be able to do things your own way. You're sick of being told how to do things. That was the biggest thing for me. Autonomy, being able to practice on my own terms, was really the driving force behind me starting my practice. There's no right reason, right? But you just need to know what your reason is, because that is gonna guide how you practice. So maybe if yours is all about lifestyle and income is less important, you're gonna set up your practice completely different than someone who is much more focused on maybe doubling their income. Their practice is going to look different than yours. So, knowing why your practice exists, why it's important, is going to be important. And that may change over time, right? You may start off focused on maybe the financial side. You want to make more money. After 10 years of doing that, maybe finances are a less big deal in your life because you've made money. And now you can focus on some other aspect of the practice, and the mission, the value of the practice has changed, right? But knowing what that is really key. So that's why I always start with individual coaching, or my group coaching is like, what is your why? Why does this practice exist? So knowing that, I think, is very important. What are your options? So, if you're someone who's exploring what you want to do, in many cases, you can incorporate obesity medicine into what you're doing already. So, whether you're a specialist, a cardiologist, an OBGYN, a family physician, you can incorporate this into what you want to do, what you're doing in your current practice. You may want to do it as a side job. Maybe you keep your main job, but you start a side practice on just Saturdays or a couple evenings a week, or telehealth. And so there's a lot of options where you could just have this as a side thing, and that may grow to a full-time thing, or maybe it's just a side passion that you have. Employment, 10 years ago, getting employed as a bariatrician or an obesity medicine specialist wasn't a thing. Like, it was almost impossible. When I went on job interviews as a family physician, a lot of people looked at me like I was crazy. They had no idea what obesity medicine was. Now there's a lot of employment opportunities, right? There's tons of telehealth opportunities, there's in-person opportunities. So that may be an option as well. And then if you are having your own practice, what is that going to look like? Is that going to be a micro practice? A micro practice is usually thought of as a practice that's sort of just you. You may have one staff member or like a virtual assistant, but there's no bells and whistles, right? It's really bare bones, just you, in a direct relationship with your patient. Although it could be insurance based and be a micro practice as well. Or it could be more a traditional practice, right? It could be a bigger practice where you have, multiple staff members, maybe multiple clinicians one day, may or may not take insurance. But like, what do you envision for this? You could also integrate your clinic with something else. So your clinic could join an aesthetics practice. Your clinic could join a bariatric surgery practice. Maybe it joins a cardiology practice. That could make sense in 2024 with our Wegovy approval for cardiovascular disease, right? So there's so many different ways that you can do this. And I think one of the things that happens a lot of times when people are trying to start their own thing is people will tell you all the right ways to do it, or why you're crazy to do it your way. Don't listen to them, right? That's what business is all about. It's all about innovation. So it may not have worked before, for a variety of reasons, or maybe no one has tried it your way before, right? So I think one of the fun things about business is being innovative. So there's no right way to do this. Do it in a way that is true, to your why, right? What lets you serve people and serve your life the way you want. Taking a step back, the way I approach obesity care is with five components. So, this is, I think I always like to talk about this because I'm not all about just meds. I've been doing this before GLPs. Treating obesity is more than just using GLP-1s. And so identifying underlying causes has always been a big part of what I do. Why does this person struggle more than someone else? And there's a lot of things that are common for a lot of our patients, right? A lot of patients have insulin resistance, but not all of them. The vast majority of time, that metabolic adaptation and appetite adaptation are a big part of this, right? But then there's a ton of unique reasons why people struggle, and explaining that to people is very powerful, and treating those can be powerful too. Customized nutrition plans, medication therapy, of course, as appropriate, which if someone's reaching out to see me, most of the time they have tried other things, and so they are ready for medication. Exercise counseling and behavior change. So those are the five components that I utilize in my practice, which I think are pretty standard, other than this identifying underlying causes, which is not always something that we talk about. And then the way I, structure my appointments, people sort of ask me this a lot, so that's why this is in here, is and this is even in a primary care setting, I always like to do an initial intake. And so that obviously is going to be the case if you're just doing obesity medicine. But if you're integrating this with a current practice, really separating that weight loss appointment, that obesity appointment, that metabolic appointment as its own thing for an intake to get a really good history, figuring out those underlying causes, come up with a personalized treatment plan. I give an hour for that, but you may need less time than that. And I know some clinicians who do 90 minutes or 2 hours for that first appointment. I also like to have a second appointment where we focus more on the treatment plan. I like to do the counseling myself. So we do all the nutrition at that point, start a medication at that point, and kind of hit on what our plan is for those five different elements or components of care. And then I see people monthly, ideally, for, the first 3 months or so, sometimes much longer, and then every 3 months sort of indefinitely, though I have some people that I've seen for so long and they're in such a groove that we, see each other every 6 or 9 months, and that's sufficient for them. So that's kind of how I do it. And I like to check in on each of these components at each visit. Sometimes that's just me checking in with myself, right? Like I'm like, okay, like I'm not going to push them anymore on exercise this week, but I'm kind of thinking of how I structure my visit as, underlying causes. Have we addressed those? Is there anything new that's popped up? Did I miss something? Is this nutrition plan working? What are they eating? What are they doing? Is the medication working? Are we adjusting it? Are they having side effects? Exercise, I'm trying to get everyone to 60 minutes, if possible, daily, at some point with resistance training at least twice a week. Like, are we on the path to get there, or like what can we do to get a little closer to there? And then the behavior change, which is really individualized. Okay. So, again, I think that scheduling these first appointments, doing a really good intake is key. And, that's what it looks like in our practice. All right. So if we're trying to integrate this practice to a clinic we already have, maybe you already have a family medicine practice, you want to have this as a new service line, announce your practice to your patients, right? Let them know that you are doing this. So that may be an email, that may be a banner in your lobby, that may be flyers. Make sure your staff knows what's going on and what you're doing and how you do it. Make sure the rest of the clinic knows what you're doing, and let your community know, whatever that may be, whether that's a gym you go to, a church you go to, your neighborhood. But don't be afraid to put yourself out there and let people know what you're doing. Explain what you do and why you do it. That message that you create is really important and powerful, right? It's not just about weight loss. Like I always say, I help people lose weight to live longer and live better. That's my phrase, right? Live longer and live better. That's why I do it. If you want to lose 5 vanity pounds, I'm not the person for you. There's no wrong way to practice medicine. If that's what you like to do, great. I am really focused on helping people live longer and live better. That's what I do. So send me people who I can do that for. Okay. So moving a little bit more onto the business side, I always like to make people feel a little less intimidated. Most clinicians, have not had a lot of business training and find business to be really overwhelming. And I did grow up in a household where there was a couple different businesses going on, so I think that kind of helped me see it when I was young. But I always say business is simple. There are just two rules. One, make more money than your business costs to run, right? Some people call that a profit, but you need to make money at least eventually, or the business isn't really a business. And then the second thing is don't break any laws to accomplish number one. And when you break it down into that, I think it becomes a lot more simple, right? Like make money, don't break the law to make money, right? Like that's the basic things you need to be doing. And then you follow your guiding principles of your why. And that's the recipe for success. I know it sounds simple, but that's really as simple as it is. Okay, so what type of practice are you going to have? Could you have? So telehealth, of course, has exploded in the last 4 years. Are you going to do partial telehealth or complete telehealth? If you're doing complete telehealth, there may be some barriers with prescribing controlled substances. If you think that's an important part of your practice, how will you handle that? Um, Sometimes people have issues with malpractice if you're completely telehealth. So just some considerations, but of course your overhead is going to be really, really low if you're just doing telehealth. You're not going to have a lot of expenses. Are you going to do any group visits? That can be a really efficient way to deliver care. Are you going to do insurance? Are you going to take cash? Is again things going to be in person, virtual, a combination? If you do those group visits, are they going to be run by you? Are they going to be run by a team member? If you take insurance, you basically are just billing as primary care or billing as your specialty, and there's some nuance that, but for the most part, it's basically billing the same way you would in any other practice. Pros of taking insurance, much quicker to build a patient panel for most people. It's easy to network with other colleagues and get referrals. And so you can grow your practice really quickly if you take insurance. And of the colleagues I know who started practices in the last couple of years and have grown them really quickly, they are taking insurance. But I'm pretty sure you already know this. Taking insurance can be immensely frustrating. It can take a while to get credentialed with insurance companies. You're stuck with whatever rates they're paying you. They don't tend to pay you immediately. It can be weeks, if not months, before you get paid for a visit. And so there's a lot of drawbacks and reasons why a lot of people are not taking insurance in all sorts of practices nowadays. If you're gonna go cash based, are you gonna do what we call fee for service, meaning you bill for each appointment? Like, each appointment with me is $150, or the first one's 300 and the second one's 200, or however you want to set that up. Or you can have some sort of membership, right? It's a 6-month package or a year-long package, or it's just monthly forever. If you're doing fee for service, where you're like, my consult's 300, my follow-ups are 200, however you want to do it, you can give people a super bill where you still code like you're taking insurance, and then the patient submits that to their insurance company and they can get some of that money back. So that can be appealing to some patients. Again, it just adds more drama and complexity to the practice. So some people don't like to do that. If you're doing a membership, what all is going to be included, being really clear on what your terms are there, and you'll need some sort of contract. And then if you're going to do this sort of in the middle thing, which is concierge, you can bill insurance and then charge for additional services above and beyond what insurance is doing. And there's, certainly lots of legal caveats to doing things that way, but it is a possible method as well. And then who else is on your team? I actually think this is where a lot of people get stuck. They feel like they need to have this whole team built out before they can deliver care. You can probably do most, if not everything, yourself if you wanted to. So, having a coach or a therapist, having a dietitian, having a personal trainer or a physical therapist, having a chef, like there's lots of options you could have. But I would encourage you to start small and add those other people when you need them. But in today's world, you can outsource a lot of these things. There's more and more companies that are coming out that give you that opportunity to have a coach, that you outsource and can help you manage your patients between visits. So lots of options there. But I think a lot of people get stuck there where they have this vision of what their clinic is going to look like. Oh, I'm going to have, a personal trainer. I'm going to have a nutritionist and all this. And if you try to start with that, and you don't have the capital to start with that. I mean, if you have $1 million to fund this super cool clinic, great. But if you are on a little bit of a tighter budget and you want to make profit more immediately, it's okay to do things on your own until you have the financial flexibility to outsource and hire some more people to do that. So prove the concept of the clinic first before you make the team too big. Another, just side point here on team, I've also worked with people who will get really fixated on one team member. They'll be like, oh, I'm bringing my medical assistant with me from my current job. She's awesome. I can't do it without her. She's bilingual. And so, we're going to serve bilingual patients and like, it's going to be great. But she's really key to the business plan. You cannot base your business around an employee. You never know what's going to happen with other people, right? You should have great employees, but you need to be able to pivot if that person gets sick, injured, moves across the country, gets a better job. You think they'll never leave you. You never know, right? So don't base your whole business or plan around one key employee. It's a mistake I see people make. Okay, so making money. Again, if you have not ever dabbled with having your own business or been close to a business, this is something a lot of physicians I know just like put out of their head, right? They've shown up for residency, they've shown up for work, and they don't really think about where the money comes from, how it works, how to make it work, and they don't like the idea of thinking about it. But one super key point is going back to those two business principles, you have to make money, right? And so even if it feels uncomfortable to charge people money, you can't offer your services if you're not making money, right? So if you went to a clinic all day in your private practice and only half the people paid for their appointment because the other people, like, they get their bill, they never pay it, you would go out of business, right? You can't run your business with just half the people paying for their visits, right? You need to know how much money you need to make for this to work. And you want to stay in business, right? You want to serve people, you want to help people. And so when you think about it that way, you're not being greedy. You have to stay in business. You have to be able to pay your employees, you have to be able to pay your rent, you have to be able to pay yourself. Otherwise, the business isn't going to last. So when you think about, money that way, it's just how things have to be to make it work, right? It's not greedy. You don't have to charge, gobs and gobs of money, but no judgment if you decide to do that. But you have to make enough money to make it worth your time, right? So when you're trying to explore that, how much do you want to work is a really key question, right? Are you okay hustling and working 60 hours a week to get what you want? Or would you prefer to work 20, 30, 35 hours a week? 15? I don't know. You get to decide. How much do you want to work? How many patients do you want to see in a day, week, or month? I'm very intensive with the type of care that I give to my patients. So I realized there was a bandwidth of how many people I could really see in a week or in a month, and give them the attention that I wanted to give. How much money do you want or need to make? What's your overhead? Overhead is just how much money it costs to run the business, right? And other things, where are you located? When you see people's prices, you need to take into account, is this person in San Francisco? Are they in rural Illinois? Those are going to have different price points, right? And different overhead, right? If you have a little clinic in rural Illinois, it's going to look very different than the space you have to rent in San Francisco. What are insurance reimbursements like in your area? These vary nationwide. So, what might make sense to do in Boston might look very different than what to do in Texas. And so, getting to know people in your community is really helpful to get a sense of what those rates are like. And then, what are your potential patients' income and insurance status? Does everyone have insurance and plan to use it? A lot of the bigger metro areas, people are more comfortable with direct care and paying physicians more directly, so they may not be worried about using their insurance. So we'll kind of think about this in two major ways. So you have what a membership model would look like versus a fee for service. So let's say your goal is to pay yourself $15,000 a month. Okay. That's the salary you would like to take home every month. And your overhead is $7,000. So that's your malpractice and your office space and your EMR, and some other expenses. And let's say you feel like I could handle 150 patients a month. I'd really like to do intensive counseling. And that feels like where I'd be comfortable if I just had 150 people I was working with. Well, let's take our 22,000. Okay, that's how much we need to make, our overhead plus our goal of how much we want to pay ourselves. So we need to bring in 22,000 a month. We're going to divide that by 150. So if we were having a membership, we would need to charge $146 per member per month, to pay ourselves $15,000 a month. So that gives you an idea of how you think about it. Okay, let's fee for service. So again, we want to make $15,000 a month. Our overhead is 7,000. And now we have to think about fee for service and about how much insurance is going to pay us. So let's say we feel like, I could see 45 people in a week. I'd be really happy only seeing 45 people in a week. And we're going to take our 22,000 and we're going to divide it by 180 visits per month. And we realize we need to make about $122 per visit to make that happen, which is pretty realistic. A lot of places with insurance reimbursements, if you bill, a 99214, plus a couple additional codes, like that is definitely doable. So, anyways, that just kind of gives you a way to think about it. So you're always thinking about how much money do you need or want to make? What's your overhead? So that's how much money you need to bring in a month, right? And then you figure out from there, how many people do you need to see in order to make that happen? All right. Another easy business tool to use when you're trying to plan your business is a SWOT analysis. So this is looking at internal versus external things that can happen. So Your internal things are going to be your strengths and weaknesses. These could be internal to you if you're just getting started. If you have the business going, what are the strengths of the business? What are the weaknesses of the business? And then what are opportunities that you or the business have? And then what are threats? And so you kind of map this all out and come to some conclusions about what decisions you need to make, right? So, for example, I think the fact that there's a ton of online telehealth platforms for weight might be a threat. So what are opportunities? Well, you could focus more on personalized care. You could decide to do in-person care, which would stand out against all the telehealth. So that's kind of how you utilize this in the mastermind. We do a whole session on this. It's probably one of my favorite mastermind sessions where we get to deep dive into this and figure out, like, what do you do with this information? Okay, marketing. Marketing, obviously people get whole degrees in this, but again, when you're a physician, you need to, be able to do a little bit of this. So marketing is not advertising. Advertising is when you are specifically sort of purchasing space to share a message, whether it's a billboard or an ad on Facebook. But it's sort of purchasing specific space or time to advertise. Marketing is a long-term picture where you are developing a relationship with your consumer. So marketing is very big picture. It's everything from the story you tell about why you're practicing obesity medicine, to the colors you use, to your logo, to the way you interact with people, your reviews, all those sorts of things. So marketing is much bigger picture. So marketing is not about selling. Selling is like, I want to make this happen, right? Selling is I want to, sell 10 memberships to my practice this month. I want to fill up the schedule. I want to sell some meal replacements. Marketing is much more big picture, developing a reputation, developing a brand for your practice. I think it's important to separate those two things. When you're trying to market, you really want to think about your ideal patient, the person you want to see, the person who's your target client, and ask what are they looking for, and then you're answering those questions. So, does this person just want to lose weight? Do they want to look better? Do they want to feel better? Do they want to get healthy? Are they particularly worried with a specific disease state like type 2 diabetes or heart disease? Do they want to take less medications? Do they want to live longer? Do they want to stop worrying about their weight? I feel like that's my target person. They don't want to worry about it anymore, right? Not just that they want to lose it, but me just letting them know if their weight is okay for them is like a huge magic wand sometimes. They want answers for why they can't lose weight. Are they trying to get pregnant? Is it a fertility issue? So what are some of the things that your target patient is looking for? And then you're going to deliver a message that's answering those questions and serving that patient. And then when you're marketing your practice, you are marketing sort of two places. You're marketing to patients, but in a lot of ways, you're also marketing to referral sources, which may be other clinicians. So are people trying to lose weight before orthopedic surgery, right? That might be what you advertise to the orthopedic surgeons. Are you helping people control diabetes? Are you improving fertility and you're helping, OBGYN colleagues? Are you trying to improve lung function or reduce sleep apnea and you're going to work with pulmonologists? Are you is it someone who's interested in obesity medicine, but they just don't have time to do it, and so they're referring people to you because you have time to do more of the counseling? Maybe they want to refer to someone who has more expertise. They're just sending more complicated cases to you. So when you're talking with referral sources, you want to know what problems they're having and how you can help solve them. So this is kind of a famous quote on the topic, which is people don't want to buy a quarter-inch drill. They want a quarter-inch hole. So this is talking about like selling drills, right? Like nobody wants like the drill, right? They want the product from the drill. They want the hole in the wall that they need, right? They need that drill hole. So if you are, trying to sell, it's not just like, this is what I'm really good at. I'm an expert at this, this, and this. It's like, you're going to feel confident that you have a plan to be healthier at your weight, right? Like that's what the person wants. They want to feel healthier or they want to lose 40 pounds before their reunion. I don't know who your target patient is, right? But you're advertising how they're going to feel, the results they're going to get, not what you're good at, right? What does the person you're selling to want, not what are you good at? Okay. So all the other, questions people have when they're thinking through, do they want to start a business? What does this look like? Or all the legal things, all the accounting things, taxes, malpractice, computer systems, and they feel really overwhelmed that they have to figure this out on their own. And I think a couple things. One, you're a doctor, like you've done really hard things depending on what your training or your specialty is. Like you've probably saved people's lives, right? Like you have done really hard things. You've gone through the hardest type of school possible. You can absolutely figure all this out. Okay. And also, there are other experts who have done a lot of training to become lawyers and accountants and malpractice agents and all these other things. And they are there to help you as well. There's also other resources like medical societies, the AMA, the OMA, your state medical societies, your county medical societies that all have tons of resources to help you. There's coaches and consultants like me who can help you figure these things out, right? There are people out there. So you don't have to know everything. You can get help with all of those things that you don't know, but you also will be able to learn and figure out a lot of it on your own. I feel 100% confident that if you became a doctor, you can figure out these other things. Okay, so some final thoughts. There's no right way to practice medicine. There's no right way to have your practice. You can evolve your practice over time, right? My practice is coming up on 10 years old and it's changed, right? It doesn't look the same. Obesity medicine has changed, COVID changed the world, and the practice has evolved. And I've changed too. And what I want from the practice and how I want to practice has changed. And it evolves with me. And that's one of the really nice things about having your own practice. You start with one thing, and again, you can change it over time. You want to set expectations for your patients. You want to be clear on your why, your mission, how you're going to do things. And you want to make choices that work for both you and your patients. And again, that's the beauty of having your own practice is you can make both of those things work. When you're employed, a lot of times it's sort of one or the other, right? And we can find a path with private practice where you can really have a win-win. Okay, so if you want more from me, number one, I'm going to hang around and answer questions for about 20 minutes here. So start popping those into the chat, please, if you haven't already. I have a 13-hour course called the Obesity Medicine Startup Course and Toolkit. This is general information. It goes really in depth. It's my model of how I practice obesity medicine. So you're going to learn how to diagnose underlying causes. You're going to learn nutrition plans. You're going to learn exercise plans, counseling. There's mock patient videos. And you also get like 70 pages of all my handouts that you can use with your patients. It does have CME. And that course was made before GLPs. So there's a whole bonus hour on GLP tips and tricks. And then I have redone the medication section as well to accommodate new medications. But that course is going to be updated at some point by the end of the year. It will be 90% the same, if not more, but it will have a little more emphasis on GLPs. I also have a 6-month mastermind. That one is starting. We have our orientation on September 10th, and then the actual sessions are starting September 19th. So if you are interested in that, you can apply online for that or shoot me an email, but that is starting very soon. All of those have sold out in the past. It's limited to 10 people. We do group coaching sessions. You get the whole course. You get some extra business courses. It's been really great and a lot of fun and really helps people get ready for their practice and start their practice or grow their practice. And then I do individual coaching as well, less of that, but that's an option as well if you want individual coaching or consulting on your practice. So again, my resources are at helpyourpatientsloseweight.com. But yeah, let's just answer questions. Oh, what did I do here? There we go. All right, let's see. So pop those questions in there. Let's see. How does income compare to family medicine income, both salaried or private practice? So traditionally for obesity medicine, if you're employed, they did a survey with the OMA maybe 5+ years ago, and it really, showed that the average income is similar to primary care. If you're taking insurance, you're billing like primary care, although there's some extra stuff you can bill for, but at the same time, you're not going to have as many quick little like, oh yeah, that's a sinus infection. Here's your medicine appointments when you're doing only obesity medicine, but ultimately about the same as primary care. Now, when you have private practice, the sky is the limit because you can add on all sorts of adjunct services that you're charging for. Sorry. Another good question about, do you recommend board certification for obesity medicine and how important is that? I think that's a really great question. So I don't think everyone needs to take the board exam for obesity medicine. half our country has obesity. We need as many people out there practicing and helping and treating as possible. I think the board is great if you are not from a primary care specialty. And so you may want more familiarity with obesity medicine. I think if you're a family physician and you do training on your own or you do something like my course, that's probably going to be enough for a lot of people. If you love obesity medicine, if you want to do more professionally with it, then the exam is what's going to make you stand out as an expert, but you absolutely don't need it to get started and practice obesity medicine. If you end up loving obesity medicine, and again, you want to do more and be considered an expert, then I think the board is a great way to do that. Or again, sometimes people are coming from other specialties like dermatology or radiology or maybe OBGYN, and they feel like they need a little bit more training. I think the board can be really helpful there as well. Questions on the carnivore diet. I have one patient who chose to do it on their own, and it was a sort of a good detox experiment for them, and they really got to, reintroduce some things afterwards and see what foods triggered them. Um, I generally am a big fan of balanced diets, but I always say just don't be a diet zealot. Just whatever worked for you or for one patient. Don't, get fixated on that. Our goals with nutrition change is really helping people focus in on what nutrition plan works for them. But I think the carnivore diet is probably not going to be the solution for the vast majority of people. How do I decide about opening my own practice versus becoming an employed physician? That is such a personal choice, right? So again, this is what I was trying to help people explore. I think some of this is financial. You know, I was in a position where I had no choice but to make it succeed. I did have a side gig while I started my practice as well that made sure I got enough guaranteed income while I grew it. But there is a financial risk to starting your own practice, absolutely. And I think it just depends what your heart is saying. So for me, autonomy was really big. I wanted to practice medicine on my own terms, and that was a big part of why I wanted my own practice. I get to pick the location of my practice. I get to pick the hours I work. I get to pick how I treat patients. If I want to spend an hour with a lot of my patients, I can. And I liked that. Some people like the structure of being employed. Some people like having benefits and paid CME. So the reward for private practice financially is going to take years to get to. But, if you stick it through long term, it definitely can be really, really beneficial. And I also would say exploring that can be I've had a couple people do the mastermind and they, spend 6 months doing it. And at the end, they decide not to start their own practice. They either get a really good opportunity that comes along, but then they've really done that deep dive on what their business would look like and have come out deciding that it's not for them or not right now. And that's okay too. Trauma surgeon in Philadelphia. I worry if I'll do this, it's viewed as a fringe provider as I'm not a primary care physician. What does a trauma surgeon know about obesity medicine? So I think that is a great example of someone who taking the obesity board and doing extra, education is going to be more powerful to learn some of the, primary care stuff in terms of diabetes and high blood pressure and things like that are going to be more powerful. But I think, that is one of the beauties of obesity medicine. You can come from any specialty and do it. And that's where crafting your narrative. So, if I was a trauma surgeon, I might say, I saw all the complications of obesity. I've been inside someone's abdomen. I've seen what fatty liver looks like. I've seen how complicated it is to manage someone with type 2 diabetes. And I decided instead of waiting until someone was sick and on the operating table, I wanted to do things sooner. And that's why I became an obesity medicine specialist, right? So I think you craft a message like that about your why, right? Like, yeah, I'm a trauma surgeon and I know the anatomy inside and out, and I've seen what obesity can do. And I decided I wanted to stop putting band aids on things as a surgeon and I wanted to fix root causes. So your message might look something like that, but obesity medicine is a specialty, but I think long term, we need people who can start with the basics. And if something's out of your scope, just like anything else, you're going to refer. So if you're a surgeon and now you're an obesity medicine specialist, you might refer people to endocrinologists more. Maybe you're not going to manage diabetes and you're not going to manage hypothyroidism, but you're really good at managing their GLP. You're really good at helping with nutrition. You're really good with motivating. Like maybe that's all you need to do. How many patients would Do you had a practitioner? I don't know what that question is. How many patients would you maybe have per practitioner? So this is where, people ask these really specific questions. How many patients do you need? For an obesity medicine practice, I think, it depends how much you want to work and how much you want to make, right? But you really only need a couple hundred patients to have a successful obesity medicine practice because you're going to be seeing people possibly monthly. And so, you can only see so many people in a month. So that is the really nice thing about obesity medicine practice, especially if you do things on the more intensive side, is you don't need that many patients because you are seeing them frequently. It's kind of like a psych practice. Once you start seeing someone, chances are you're going to see them for a long time. And you can only see so many people in a month. And then once you're full, you either add another clinician or you add a dietitian or you add a coach that can help you, expand if you want to expand. What options for best structuring compensation up to 50/50? Oh, if you're adding another practitioner. Again, there's so many models for this. So my nurse practitioner has a set hourly rate, and then she gets a production bonus on top of that. And then my doctors all get a specific percent of collections. I always say figure out what your percentage is. So when we were first starting to hire people, I got to keep about 65% of what I made. So my overhead was 35%. And so I, use that as a reference point for how I set my physicians' salaries. Dr. Frankel, any challenges you face when starting an obesity medicine practice and membership program? We had a lot of people get mad when we moved entirely to a membership program about a year and a half ago. We got a lot of negative reviews that we're still coming back from. A lot of people roasted us in Facebook groups. It was one of the more challenging things I've gone through. I'm not going to lie. It was really hard. But on the other side, we have patients that love us, love our model with our membership. And we've continued to grow, and the patients who have chosen to utilize our model love it. So you just have to be confident in the reason why you're doing things. But yeah, it was a huge challenge. We got a lot of pushback, a lot of people who were not happy. We changed our model. But if you know you're doing things for the right reason for your practice, then you will have to weather storms like that. Competing with compounds. So I think the competing with compounds, like number one, I don't really view any competition in this field, if I'm being honest. So many people need our help. Half of our country has obesity. Every single doctor in America could become an obesity medicine specialist and we would still have patients to serve. So I don't like to get caught up in that competitive mind space. I also don't see myself as competing with compounded clinics. I'm providing comprehensive obesity care. I'm one of the authors on the comprehensive obesity guidelines for the OMA, and I'm providing comprehensive care. I am not just filling a script. What I do is very different. And so I guess I just don't even worry about it. I always say be cream, keep being good at what you're doing, and the right people will find you. So be clear on your message, be clear on what you do, market yourself that way, and you'll get the right people who are the right fit for you. And the people who are a fit for the other clinic will go to that clinic, and that's okay. I don't have to make every single person happy. I'm not trying to sell, iPhones and get every single person in the world to buy it. I'm trying to find my ideal customer who loves me and thinks I'm great, and that I connect with and I can help. Um, how much of your time is spent in obesity medicine versus primary care? I was really, really struggle to answer that question. I'm moving more away from primary care and doing more obesity medicine, not surprisingly, but it's so integrated the way I do it. So it's so hard for me to say, but I would say about 25 to 30% of my patients don't have obesity, and so I'm not seeing them for obesity at all. And then for my patients who do have obesity, their primary care and obesity care is all kind of integrated together, right? I mean, treating depression helps me treat obesity, treating ADHD helps me treat obesity, treating obesity helps me treat diabetes. And so it's always really hard for me to quantify. I used to say 50/50, but now I'd say it's probably like 70%, metabolic care, perhaps. What qualifications should a nutritionist in your practice have working? So, there's dietitians. Those are clinicians who have a degree in dietetics. Nutritionists, like it's just a word, so it's kind of like a coach. There's no like formal approved training for that. So I would say it's more important that you have someone that you trust if you're hiring a nutritionist who's on board and is, counseling patients the way you would want to. They're really just on your team with you. And I also would say, minimum work experience. Sometimes you can hire new people that are great, but certainly people who have done something for a couple of years often can make your life a lot easier. Though, in the case of a nutritionist or sometimes a dietitian, if they've been working in one method for a long way, they may have trouble getting on board with the way you do things. So, starting with someone fresh can have an advantage too. When starting from zero, would you recommend starting in telemed to start profiting, to help fund an in-person clinic, or take a loan? So what I would actually recommend is if you can sublet space from another doctor where you just borrow their room or rent it for a small amount, you can have access to that room, one day a week or even every day. And you maybe are virtual forward, telehealth forward, but you have that in-person clinic that you're paying maybe a couple hundred to $1,000 a month for. That's a really great way to get started. We actually started our clinic it's called Office Evolution. It's kind of like Regus. It's just a room you rent. And so we couldn't do any primary care procedures and things for the first 9 months we had our clinic. We had to send them to friends and colleagues. But that was a really great way to get momentum going with low overhead. So if you can sublet space or just have like a room that's a short-term rent somewhere for 9 months or a year, I think that's the way. I think you're limited with telehealth. If you're going to do telehealth only, you're going to really have to be much better at marketing and branding in order to have people find you. And then weekly injection appointments sounds like a compounding thing, so that's not part of my practice. Do you have any recommendations for malpractice insurance? Yes, email me or tag me online so I can send you those, but I don't have them quick enough to give without moving on. Best strategy to market. Yeah. So if you haven't discovered Phil Boucher, he's a DPC pediatrician who has amazing marketing suggestions. He's all over social media. But marketing, it depends on, again, if you're cash or if you're insurance based. If you're insurance based, marketing with other clinicians is going to be a really good resource so they can refer to you. You can do an open house. You can do virtual presentations like this where you invite people in your area. If you're doing more telehealth, cash pay, you're probably going to want to do more actual advertising where you do, possibly paid ads on Facebook or Instagram or Google. You're going to want to have a good social media presence and really build your story and figure out who your ideal client is and speak to them. That was a very quick answer, but more or less that's the answer. I do not use compounded medications. I was one of the authors on the most recent position article that came out on those. How do you fix your membership packages? I don't know what that means, but feel free to clarify that and I'll try to answer it. Let's see. Do you have them come back for a separate visit if they're seeing you for family practice? Yeah. So, I, especially in the very beginning, try to separate it. Your obesity consult is your obesity consult. We're not going to deal with your cold or your foot pain at that appointment. Same thing with your second one. And then moving forward, if it really depends, I do 30 minutes for my patients for follow-up. So most of the time I can address, their obesity questions as well as, a quick thing on top of it. But that's guideline you get to create. You can be like, no, like the obesity clinic's on Tuesday and Thursdays and family medicine is Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And like you're seeing me for one or the other. And that's okay. You can absolutely create that boundary. I'm leasing Office Evolution. How much can you do in obesity medicine? Were you able to see patients when you rent? Yeah, I mean, I was seeing patients in that. I was taking insurance and billing insurance at that point. How do you draft membership packages? What did you do to avoid dissatisfaction? So, I think that's actually a great question, and I should probably include in here is like this like worry that you're not going to be enough and people aren't going to be satisfied. I have had many people refer a friend or family member to me after their first appointment. They have not lost a pound when they walk out of my office, but they felt confident that someone listened to them, that someone believed them, and that someone was going to be by their side and help them figure things out. So I think that for me, that's what patients like. You may have patients who only care and only like you if get to their goal weight. And that's a marketing thing, right? If you are doing a lot of before and after pictures and people are expecting that they are going to fit into their skinny jeans and they're going to be at their high school weight, then they may have a higher expectation. If you are saying, I am an obesity expert and let's figure out why you're struggling and let's figure out what your healthy weight needs to be, right? Do you need to lose 100 pounds or do you just need to lose 50 or do you just need to lose 20? And when they feel confident in that treatment plan and that someone's listening to them, that's been really powerful in my practice. People just want to feel like they're being listened to, and that they're getting healthier. But again, it depends who you're advertising to. So if you have lots of really aggressive before and after pictures on your website, people are going to expect those results. If you say, I'm here to help you live longer and live better, and we're going to figure out what that path is for you, and you can show them that, right? Well, your A1C went down 3 points. Well, when you came in, you were short of breath walking to the mailbox, and now you can walk a mile, or you just did your first 5K. When you help coach people and show them their improvements, then that's really powerful. All right, I have about 2 more minutes because I have another talk I'm giving at 11 my time. Were you able to do physical exams in the office? Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. So the way we set up our office in Office Evolution was we had, like a desk with a computer and it was a consult. So we would sit and then off to the side, we had an exam table. And so we would do that there. And then we would do, blood pressure. We had a scale. I actually had my InBody in that office. And a stethoscope. So yeah, we could do that. We couldn't do sensitive primary care exams, right? So we didn't do any pelvic exams, anything that needed to be done urgently. We referred to our gynecology colleagues. During that time period, we couldn't do procedures there. So anything that was time sensitive, again, we referred out. But yeah, we could absolutely like listen to heart, lungs, do a belly exam, get a blood pressure, get vitals in that room. We were just doing it ourselves as the doctor. It was a micro practice, right? We didn't have an MA checking them in. We would go get them from the lobby, bring them back, literally process their payment ourselves, and then do the whole exam, including vitals ourselves. So if you're doing more of a micro practice when you're getting started, it's a mind switch that you're like, I have to do everything myself. I have tried selling supplements in my practice, but I never really got that into it. I didn't like having them in my office. There was a pressure to sell them before they went bad. But nowadays you can have online stores, and those can be great. So I'm not against selling supplements as a business plan if they're ones you believe in and you're offering patients alternatives and not forcing them to just get yours. I think it can be a great part of a business plan if it's stuff you believe in. There's a few that have come out recently that I'm big fans of, and I'll send patients links, and then I get like an affiliate, for selling them. But yeah, so selling supplements, selling meal replacements can be a really great way to add income to your obesity medicine practice. And again, I think just doing things that are in line with your vision and what you think is right, is really key. But yeah, those are ways that a lot of practices traditionally have been very successful is supplements and things like that. Sites like Whole Script is probably the most popular for selling supplements, but it's I would say that's not my area of expertise. Experiment with a few, but Whole Script is one that you can do. And then there's other things that you can create accounts with directly, sometimes as well if there's a supplement you're a fan of, that's not sold on their site. But they sell most supplements on Whole Script. Okay. Well, I have to run. Feel free to reach out to me if you have other questions. This recording will be up. And then if you're interested in joining the mastermind, where we get to do sessions like this every month for 90 minutes and you get all the other materials, please reach out. That is starting again in September. So that is coming up in a couple weeks. All right. Take care.